On January 1, 2007, a homeless man discovered a body named Janisha Livette Peters. She was 17 years old and was found dead in the 9500 block of Southwestern Avenue in Gramercy Park, Los Angeles. She had been shot and covered with a garbage bag. At that time, police linked the victim's DNA to another 20 years prior victims' DNA, which led their investigation into the serial killer named Ronnie David Franklin Jr., known as the Grim Sleeper. Welcome to Rotten Crimes, where we delve into the darkest corners of human history. In this episode, we uncover the chilling tale of terror that shook the South Side to its core, enigmatic figure known as the South Side Slayer. For years, a malevolent presence lurked in the shadows, preying upon innocent lives, leaving a trail of fear and unanswered questions. The South Side Slayer struck fear into the hearts of the community, operating with cunning and stealth that baffled investigators. Join us as we unravel the cryptic clues, explore the haunting crime scenes, and attempt to understand the mind of this elusive predator. Through in-depth analysis and expert insights, we aim to shed light on a case that continues to send shivers down the spine of those who remember. From the dark alleys to the quiet streets, no corner was safe from the grasp of this sinister force. As we journey through the chilling details of this mystery, prepare to immerse yourself in a narrative that's as bone-chilling as it is perplexing. Ronnie David Franklin Jr. was born on August 30, 1952. He grew up in South Central Los Angeles, California. He got married and had 2 children. After being convicted of gang raping a 17-year-old girl in Stuttgart, West Germany in April 1974 and released, he was dishonorably discharged from the U.S. Army in July 1975. Franklin and other military personnel stationed in Stuttgart stopped to ask the teen for directions and offered to drive him home. When she accepted, they put a knife to her throat, drove to a field, and raped her repeatedly. She was able to pretend to be interested in Franklin and asked for his phone number, with which the police identified Franklin. Pictures were taken by the rapist during the gang rape. In 1989, Franklin was convicted of 2 counts of theft, 1 count of misdemeanor assault, and 1 count of assault. As he later did to women he raped and murdered, he only served time on one of the theft charges. In the mid-1980s, the Los Angeles Police Department (LAPD) became aware of an apparent serial killer who was targeting black women, drug users, and street sex workers. The killer, known as the South Side Slayer, is believed to have stabbed and strangled at least 13 sex workers to death between 1983 and late 1985. The murders were previously known as the Strawberry Murders. The word strawberry is slang for a woman who exchanges sex for drugs. In 1985, the Los Angeles Police Department explained the incident at a press conference and asked the public for information. After the press conference, the Los Angeles Police Department was heavily criticized for not warning South Central residents earlier about a possible serial killing. Prescott held weekly outdoor protests and pressured the city to form a task force to investigate the killings. He discovered that the police were not interested in the murders in South Central. He compared this to the intense interest in investigating Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, a serial killer who preyed on women in upscale neighborhoods in Los Angeles and San Francisco. She was accused of murdering a poor black woman there, and her drugs became a hot topic. He accused the Los Angeles Police Department of indifference to the deaths of employers and sex workers. A claim the LAPD denied, and by January 1986 had linked 15 murders to the case. It was done. More detectives were added to the joint investigation between the Los Angeles Police Department and the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, which became known as the South Side Slayer Task Force. However, the case remained under investigation until 1986. Prescott formally established her activist group as a community organization called the Black Coalition Against Serial Murder, and in March 1986 approached the Los Angeles City Council to seek a reward for information on the murders. They were pressured to increase the amount from $10,000 to $25,000. By late 1986, conflicting approaches and suspect testimony led investigators to believe that one killer was involved in all the murders. The Southside Slayer Task Force disputed the initial theory that there were multiple serial killers, possibly more than 4, who murdered women in South Los Angeles. Regulations began in 1987 because no results were seen in terms of costs and personnel costs. We have very few leads at this point, Task Force Commander Lt. John Zorn told the Los Angeles Times in December 1987. At this point, the flow of clues is very little. Doesn't exist, he said. Over the years that followed, serial killer Louis Crane committed at least 2 so-called Southside Slayer murders. And serial killers Michael Hughes, Daniel Lee Siebert, Chester Turner, and Ivan Hill each committed at least 1. It turned out that he had sinned. Moreover, some of the murders may have been committed individually by female prostitutes or clients, unrelated to the serial killer. The murders of Judith Simpson, Cynthia Walker, and LaTanya Johnson, committed with a 9mm pistol in late 1988, were also investigated by the Southside Slayer Task Force. Sheriff Detective Ricky Ross was arrested on murder charges after drug and sex workers were found in a car with a rusty 9mm Beretta semi-automatic pistol in the trunk. Ross was charged with murder after the LAPD forensically linked his gun to the murder bullet. An independent forensic analysis determined that his gun was unlikely to be the murder weapon, so he was released. All 3 of these murders remain unsolved. .25 caliber gun use remains unsolved, and other known serial killers are unknown. The first known murder in the series was the August 1985 murder of Deborah Jackson, which was linked by firearms forensic examination to the August 1986 murder of Henrietta Wright. By 1987, the same gun had caused 7 casualties, all shot at point-blank range in the chest. 20 years later, the perpetrators of these crimes have come to be called grim sleepers because of their long periods of inactivity between murders. In May 2007, the murder of Janesia Peters, 25, was linked to at least 11 unsolved murders in Los Angeles by DNA analysis. The first murder occurred in 1985. That same year, the Los Angeles Police Department secretly formed the 800 Task Force. Consists of 6 detectives and is overseen by the Robbery and Homicide Division. After a 4-month-long investigation, LA Weekly investigative reporter Christine Parasek opened up about the existence of a special commission, the connection between Peter's murder and previous murders, and the killers of Mayor Antonio Villar-Igosa and William J. Bratton, reported the silence of the police chief existence. Villar-Igosa and Bratton did not issue a press release or alert the community. In some cases, LA Weekly was the first to tell bereaved families that their daughters had long been identified as victims of a serial killer, and in early September 2008, Los Angeles authorities confirmed the murders. He announced a $500,000 reward for helping him catch the culprit. On November 1st, the incident was featured on Fox's America's Most Wanted. On February 25, 2009, Bratton spoke to the press for the first time about the incident. When police officially gave the killer the nickname Grim Sleeper, as chosen by LA Weekly magazine, Bratton also released 911 calls from the 1980s. In the call, a man reported seeing bodies dumped by Franklin, and gave a detailed description and license plate number of a van associated with the now-closed Cosmopolitan Church. In March 2009, Parasek conducted an extensive interview with Eniecha Washington, the sole survivor of the Franklin attacks. Washington described him as a black man in his early 30s. I was wearing it tucked in. She also explained the interior and exterior of his car. Law enforcement missed the opportunity to arrest Franklin because his DNA was not collected beforehand. In 2003, Franklin was convicted of a felony and sentenced to 3 years probation. In 2004, voters passed Proposition 69. The proposal would require DNA to be collected from all felons and all people arrested on certain specific charges, It is also necessary to expand the DNA database. Authorities collected and classified thousands of DNA samples. Franklin's DNA was supposed to be entered into the system while he was on parole. But parole officers were unable to collect data from people who were on parole without supervision. From November 2004 to August 2005, there are no entries because no samples were taken. The probation office did not have the resources to muster. Franklin was identified, at least in part, through familial DNA analysis. Police could not find an exact match between the DNA found at the crime scene and the profile in the California DNA Profile Database. So they searched the database to find enough similarities for police to infer familial relationships. Police searched for saved profiles. They found similar DNA from Franklin's son Christopher, who was convicted of gun crimes in 2008. Although Christopher was too young to commit the murders, investigators identified his father, Ronnie, as the culprit based on family DNA matches. An undercover police officer posing as a waiter at the restaurant where Franklin dined collected plates, cutlery, glasses, and pizza dough to obtain DNA. Cooley said investigators used discarded pizza pieces and the victim's saliva to confirm a DNA match. On July 7, 2010, Mr. Franklin was arrested. The Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office charged Franklin with 10 counts of murder, 1 count of attempted murder, and multiple counts of murder with special circumstances. On December 16, 2010, the Los Angeles Police Department released 180 photos of the woman found in Franklin's home and tried to identify more potential victims. Ronnie Franklin's reign of terror in the city of Los Angeles spanned more than 2 decades, and we don't know if there were more victims or not. In total, investigators collected more than 1,000 photos of him and hundreds of hours of video of him in his house. The images primarily feature black women ranging from teenagers to middle age, often naked. Police believe Franklin was carrying around many of the photographs taken 30 years ago, which showed both conscious and unconscious people. Many photos were released to help identify the woman. On November 3, 2011, Reuters reported that police were considering Franklin as a suspect in 6 additional murders. Police had been investigating 2 of the 6 as victims of murders spanning 14 years. From the first Grim Sleeper murder in 1988 to several others starting in 2002, the bodies of 2 of the remaining 4 victims were found in their homes. Police said the people had been reported missing in the 1980s and in 2005, but the bodies of the other 2 were never found. Investigators looked through hundreds of old case files and asked for the public's help in identifying 180 photos of women and girls in Franklin's possession, linking him to 6 other murders. Franklin was charged with 10 counts of murder and 1 count of attempted murder and was held without bail. He was not charged with the death of an 11th victim, a black man, for whom no DNA evidence was found. After lengthy pretrial discovery and several delays, the trial opened on February 16, 2016. Closing arguments began on May 2, 2016, and the jury began deliberations on May 4, 2016. After nearly 3 months and a day of trial, on May 5, 2016, Franklin was found guilty of all charges in half of jury deliberations. His sentencing hearings began a week later on May 12, 2016. At the hearing, prosecutors presented evidence relating to 4 other victims believed to have been murdered by Franklin. The 4 victims were not among the original group identified as Grim Sleeper victims by DNA and ballistic evidence, and were identified as such only after Grim Sleeper's arrest. 3 victims, Sharon Alicia Desmuke, Inez Warren, and Georgia Mae Thompson, were identified by Special Forces personnel investigating reports of unsolved missing persons and murders dating back to 1976. Identified as a likely sleeper victim. A 4th, Laurenia Morris, was identified from evidence found in Franklin's garage after his arrest. Her body has never been found. Prosecutors did not indict Franklin in these murders, fearing that the trial would be further delayed. On June 6, 2016, a Los Angeles County jury sentenced Franklin to death. On August 10, A superior court sentenced Franklin for each of the charges, naming individual victims. Prosecutors suspect that Ronnie Franklin's first victim was Sharon Alicia Dismuke, who was murdered on January 15, 1984. His first confirmed victim was Deborah Jackson, who was murdered in August 1985. Franklin apparently went on hiatus for 14 years after his last known crime. In 1988, the next confirmed murder occurred in 2002. As a result of this apparent dormancy, he has been nicknamed the Grim Sleeper. Investigators say they believe it is likely that there were other as yet unidentified victims. During this period, the last confirmed murder was in January 2007, and all but one of the victims were black women. One of his supposed victims was a black man. Many of the victims were sex workers, and Franklin is known to have been in frequent contact with sex workers. All of the victims were found outdoors, many in alleys just outside downtown Los Angeles. He shot all his victims with a .25 caliber gun. Franklin took many photographs of naked women and kept the records in his garage. On March 28, 2020, Franklin was found dead in his cell. His cause of death is pending the results of an autopsy, according to reports. However, there were no signs of trauma. As of June 2023, his cause of death and autopsy results have not been made public. In 2014, British filmmaker Nick Bloomfield produced a documentary film about Franklin, Tales of the Grim Sleeper. In 2014, Lifetime premiered The Grim Sleeper, a film based on the incident. It was produced by Michael Jaffe Films and starred Dreama Walker, Macy Gray, Ernie Hudson, and Michael O'Neill. In 2017, journalist Christine Parasite published an investigative report on the incident, The Grim Sleeper. This story was featured in Season 1, Episode 4 of The Face of Evil, Episode 4, The Grim Sleeper, which premiered on May 9, 2019. Victim Enietra Margaret tells how she met Franklin in Season 1, Episode 7 of the A&E series I Survived a Serial Killer. The Law and Order, LA episode Bologna Creek has similarities to the Grim Sleeper case. And there you have it, a haunting chapter from the annals of crime historia tale that still echoes through the alleys and streets of the South Side. The South Side Slayer remains an enigma, a dark shadow cast upon the memories of those affected. Remember to subscribe and hit that notification bell to stay updated on our ongoing investigations into the most enigmatic crimes of our time. Your support allows us to shine a light on these dark mysteries and, perhaps, one day, find closure for those left in the wake of such heinous acts. Thank you for joining us on this chilling journey into the heart of darkness. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay curious, and never forget truth behind rotten crimes is waiting to be uncovered.